Here we go. Georgetown fellow detained by ICE due to his wife being Palestinian. His wife. Put it in full mass. Let's get into it. A federal judge has blocked the removal of Georgetown researcher Badar Khan Suri, who was taken and detained by authorities this week. A lawsuit filed by Suri's attorney said the Trump administration appeared to be targeting the Georgetown University fellow due to his wife's identity as a Palestinian and her constitutionally protected speech. U.S. District Judge, put her up, Patricia Tolliver Giles, issued an order barring Suri's deportation from the United States, quote, unless and until the court issues a contrary order, end quote. So on March 17th, Suri, a visiting scholar with lawful status in the United States of America, was arrested outside of his apartment building and charged with removability and detained. That's according to a complaint obtained by ABC News. An attorney for Suri told ABC News he is currently being held in Louisiana. There's more. The Department of Homeland Security alleges that Suri was spreading Hamas propaganda and accused him of having ties to the terror group. Quote, this was done pursuant to a policy to retaliate and punish non-citizens like Mr. Suri solely for their family ties to those who may have either expressed criticism of U.S. foreign policy as it relates to Israel. Attorneys representing Suri said in the complaint, Suri's wife is a U.S. citizen. His attorneys said on Monday, according to the complaint, law enforcement agents who identified themselves as members of DHS told Suri that the government had revoked his visa and did not permit Suri's wife to hand over his passport and other documents. Quote, the agents had face coverings and Miss Sela could only see their eyes, attorney said in the complaint. 2 hours after he was removed, Suri called his wife to let her know he was being transferred to a detention center in Farmville, Virginia. His attorney said, DHS says Suri was, quote, actively spreading Hamas propaganda and promoting anti-Semitism on social media, according to a statement. The department alleges Suri had close connections to a, quote, known or suspected terrorist who is a senior advisor to Hamas. Now, can we just back up for a minute and let's talk about this based on the words the government provided. We now know the government was targeting the wife. We now know the government wrongfully detained Suri. We know the government now has an order contrary to their actions. But let's take them at their word. According to the government, you can be arrested and detained because of who you may possibly, perhaps, know or have an association with, okay? That's according to the government. You can be arrested or detained or deported based on what you have said in opposition to policies in the United States of America and or our policies abroad. You can be arrested for exercising your freedom of speech. That's what the government is telling you. Nothing they noted here is illegal. Nothing. Everything they said, every context they provided are freedoms that you have in this country, on this soil. their freedoms. There's more. Quote, the Rubio determination and the government's subsequent actions and plans to whisk him 1,600 miles away in the same manner as the government did in the case of Mr. Mahmoud Khalil, isolating him from his wife, from his children, community, and legal team, are plainly intended as retaliation and punishment for Mr. Suri's protected speech, the complaint says, referring to the recent arrest of Columbia University activist Mahmoud Khalil, and we covered that here on Indisputable. Attorneys for Mr. Suri are requesting the court in Alexandria, Virginia, to assume jurisdiction and vacate the Trump administration's unlawful policy of targeting non-citizens for removal based on First Amendment protected speech, advocating for Palestinian rights and or their family relationships. One of the attorneys who represents Suri said his detainment happened because, quote, President Trump wants to silence anyone he suspects to hold a political opinion contrary to his. The attorney said Suri's legal team was able to connect with him, and he is currently held in Louisiana. Georgetown University says Suri is an Indian national who was granted a visa to enter the United States to continue his doctoral research on peace building in Iraq and Afghanistan. This individual is dedicated to the solution, literally engaged in doctoral studies to figure out how to bring peace to regions that politicians could really care less about outside of how does it serve them. So you have one of the good guys here. He's a hero, okay? This is happening, and these are the stories that we know about. I'm sure there are stories that we have not been able to catch yet. They have not made the public. They have not made the news. But these are the ones we do know about. Why is this happening? Well, I believe this is happening because they know by the time it gets unraveled by the court, it gets figured out by one of the judicial officers, by the time it hits the media, you have created such havoc in the human being's life. You've created such an issue for them. You've turned their lives upside down that they may be less willing to engage in the advocacy that they're engaged in. They may be less willing to approach a problem and actually solve it. They may be less willing to actually lend their voice for the voiceless. And that is probably the agenda in the first place. We're going to keep you updated on this story and more.